Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. This is the Fast Friday edition of the show for August 21st, 2020. A true revolutionary movement is really a revolution in thought, which eventually leads to human action and then concrete change. So today, I'm going to share with you what I think are the top 3 things that are 100% needed to create a winning mindset to advance liberty. First of all, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. On our show homepage is where you're going to need to go just to get up to date. This is where you get everything you need to follow this show. All the episodes we've done, links in the show notes of individual episodes so you can read and learn more, all the platforms we're on, video, audio, and on and on. That is 10thamendmentcenter.com/Path to Liberty. It just recently got a little refresh, so I encourage you to check it out. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/Path to Liberty, all spelled out. And I couldn't be more grateful for you spending some of your time with me today. Thank you very much for being here. I can't say that enough. Thank you. But I promise to not take up too much of your time since it's Fast Friday. Let's see if I can get this done in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So 3 things, the top 3 things in my mind. Let's start out with number 1, which is stop asking for centralized solutions. We live under the largest government in the history of the world. Going to the biggest government, which creates most of the problems that we face in the first place, to resolve those problems isn't just bad strategy. It's dangerous. And to back that up, let's go to the great Patrick Henry from the Virginia Ratifying Convention, where he gave a number of important speeches. This one from June 9th, 1788. And he put it this way. Oh, wrong page up. Okay, here he is, Patrick Henry. Consolidation. Consolidation was a phrase or a term that most founders regularly used for centralization of power, when they consolidate power in one place. And Patrick Henry said, consolidation must end in the destruction of our liberties. Not that it might or it could or it's likely, it must. He expected it to happen. And surprise, surprise, Patrick Henry was right. Next up on this list to back this up is Thomas Jefferson. And here in 1821, in a letter to Nathaniel Macon, he was already seeing the writing on the wall, recognizing that centralized power was going to lead to total destruction. And he put it this way: our government is now taking so steady a course as to show by what road it will pass to destruction. To wit, by consolidation first, and then corruption, its necessary consequence. If you ever wonder yourself, like, man, why are all these politicians lately more and more corrupt? Well, first of all, we have social media, which kind of shines a light on things and people learn about stuff faster. On the other hand, we have more and more centralization of power year in and year out, more consolidation. And Thomas Jefferson knew back then that the necessary consequence of centralized power would be corruption. He went on, he says, the engine of consolidation will be the federal judiciary. The 2 other branches, the corrupting and corrupted instruments. So number 1 is stop asking for centralized solutions, whether it's Congress, the executive branch, or that engine of consolidation, the federal judiciary. Number 2, elections on the federal level, national elections, will absolutely not fix things. And a lot of people, in fact, maybe most people, when it comes to any type of political activism, whether it's just keyboard warrior or spending money or whatever, most of their energy is put into one candidate over the other, either Senate, House, executive branch, whatever it may be. They focus all of their energy on Washington, D.C. And again, this is a centralized solution in a way, but it's also a very specific strategy. I covered this in some detail in an episode 2 years ago, November of 2018. Relying on elections is a bad strategy. I will include a link to this in the show notes so you can check it out or rewatch or listen to it when you have time. But this is going over James Madison's advice from Federalist 46 on how to defeat federal programs that are either unconstitutional, he called them unwarrantable, or even those constitutional ones that were seen as bad policy. He gave us 4 steps, and not one of them, not one, was sue the federal government in the federal courts, and not one of them was vote the bums out. Not saying that you should never try to do that, but if you really want to be effective, you should follow the father of the Constitution's advice, and it's far different than relying on Washington, D.C. to fix itself. There's also Thomas Jefferson, who might expand on this a little bit more. In his draft of the Kentucky Resolutions of 1798, this was a draft that he had written sometime before October 4th of that year, and he put it this way. In cases of an abuse of the delegated powers in the Constitution, he says, the members of the general government being chosen by the people, a change by the people would be the constitutional remedy. So if they're just doing bad policy, they're exercising powers that they are supposed to have in ways that you don't like. The proper remedy, according to Jefferson, is to vote the bums out, change the people. But we're so far from that. A vast majority, 80, 90, 95% of what Washington, D.C. has done in modern times is not authorized by the Constitution as ratified by the people of the several states. So we're well beyond this as a remedy to what we face. And this is how Jefferson advised us. He says, where powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. The short version, look, federal elections aren't going to fix things. Voting the bums out has not worked. All we've ever gotten was either a failure to vote the bum out, or almost every single new one that comes in is just a new bum. This is a really bad strategy, and again, it's dangerous. So number two, don't rely on federal elections to fix things. They just don't work. And then number three, don't rely on the Constitution to enforce itself. Or, on the other hand, don't blame it for failing to enforce itself. Period. And a lot of people that are friendly to our work, primarily ANCAP libertarians, anarcho-capitalist libertarians, they often think they have a gotcha anytime we talk about the Constitution, and they point out a quote from Lysander Spooner in his famous tract, No Treason. I think it was written in 1867. I've seen an 1870 publication of it as well. But Spooner did a lot of amazing work, and I really do need to cover him on this show a little bit more in the future. I've done a trial by jury episode where I covered his work on that. But one that we hear very often is this, and it seems to make sense on its face. He said, whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. But no one should count on words on paper, on a document, to cause or to stop anything. John Dickinson, the penman of the Revolution, he put it this way. This was in one of his Fabius letters, I think the number 4. I'll link to it in the show notes so you can read it in full detail. This is where he was advocating for ratification of the Constitution. And he put it this way: a good Constitution promotes, but not always produces, a good administration. Constitutions don't enforce themselves, and we shouldn't count on that. Of course, you want to get a situation where you get a promotion, you promote a good administration of government, but you can't rely on government officials to be good people. And in fact, Patrick Henry, in another one of those Virginia Ratifying Convention speeches, he specifically said, show me this age and country where any time in history where the people relied on their rulers being good to do the right thing, where they didn't eventually lose their liberty. Every single time they trusted government to be good people, they would always lose their liberty. So if you're counting on the Constitution, the beautiful prose, the beautiful legalese that's in there, the easy to comprehend language, whatever it may be, to be just straightforward, and all they got to do is just read the document and then we'll be good, this is a really bad strategy as well. And we were warned about this. Here is James Madison as well in Federalist 48. He and many other founders, leading founders and old revolutionaries, recognized that at best, the best Constitution, like Dickinson said, could promote a good administration, but they saw them as what Madison called a parchment barrier. And this is how he summed up Federalist 48. He says, a mere demarcation on parchment of the constitutional limits of the several departments is not a sufficient guard against those encroachments which lead to a tyrannical concentration of all the powers of government in the same hands. Short version, the Constitution cannot, and it will not, and it never should be expected to enforce itself. And so whether you believe it should or it has failed in doing that, magically doing something that it can't do in the first place, then you're really missing out on the root of the problem. So what should people be relying on then if they're not counting on the Constitution to self-enforce? Well, Dickinson went a little bit further, and he put it this way. He's talking about the sovereign people, the supreme sovereignty of the people. And the founders considered sovereignty to be understood as final authority. He says it is their duty to watch and their right to take care that the Constitution be preserved. It's up to the people to make this happen. Or in the Roman phrase, on perilous occasions, he said, to provide that the republic receive no damage. And he goes on, he says a little bit further, he says, it is the power from which they proceed and which they serve, the political bodies where they get power, that truly and of right balances them. It doesn't matter how well you've designed the checks and balances within the government of itself. If you're talking about the three branches in the federal government or even the states versus the federal government, the truly and of right balances, according to John Dickinson, are the people themselves. And those are the top three things that I think really it's a mindset change. 1, stop asking for centralized solutions. 2, don't look to federal elections to fix anything. And 3, don't rely on the Constitution to enforce itself, or don't blame it when it isn't enforced. And that makes me think of one little bonus one here. It's John Adams in a letter to Hezekiah Niles. This was in 1818, I believe. Yeah, February 13th, 1818. And he put it this way. But what do we mean by the American Revolution? Do we mean the American War? The revolution was effected before the war commenced. The revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people, a change in their religious sentiments, of their duties and obligations. And he said this mentality change, and I'm paraphrasing, this change of thoughts, the hearts and minds of the people, this was the real American Revolution. Well, I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope it was educational. More important than anything, I hope you learned something. If you enjoy the show, you enjoyed this episode, please consider doing a few things to help us spread the word. They're free and easy. You can smash the like button, subscribe, get notifications, share links. On the podcast edition, iTunes, and elsewhere, reviews do a lot. All of those actions, it tells the platform's algorithm. They're very easily triggered. It tells those algorithms to show the program to more and more people, and all that stuff has been helping out a great deal. If you really want to pitch in and get behind us, put your financial faith behind our work, I'd be very grateful for any consideration you can give to joining our membership program, which starts out as little as $2 a month. You can find that over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week here on the Path to Liberty.